Welcome, my dear ones. This is Tracy Anderson Askew, your host for the Transform Your Birth podcast, changing your mind about birth one story at a time. Each week, we'll be exploring a birth story through the lens of what birth can teach us. I'll be digging deep into each story so you can learn what it is that can change the way a birth unfolds. We can't control birth, but we can influence it. So listen in to find out how. Enjoy. Mel had a spontaneous labour and finds herself progressing quite quickly to the point that she is pushing it home. After an ambulance ride to the hospital, she gets there in time to have her baby in the water. She needs some help with the placenta and is able to manage and adjust to that unexpected moment with grace and confidence. A lovely, inspiring story to remind us all that the body knows what to do, even when we sometimes need help. Enjoy. Hello there. Another week of the Transform Your Birth podcast. Good to have you join me. And today we've got a lovely new mum, Melanie, with a 6-week-old. She's so lovely. So welcome, Mel. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me or us.
All right. Now, so you're pretty fresh. You're pretty raw. It hasn't been that long ago. Tell us, how did you prepare? How are you feeling about having a baby and what sort of preparation did you do?
I didn't really, it wasn't until I hit the 3rd trimester that I was like, oh, there's a baby coming. And I honestly hadn't thought about the birth. And then 3rd trimester hit and I was like, oh, I probably need to do a little bit of research about this and think about it. And I also knew that I wanted my partner to kind of be educated about how he could help me as well. That was a really big, like once I started thinking about it, that was the biggest thing for me. I didn't really have any worries myself, but I don't tend to overthink things. But I knew that, I wanted him to not feel so helpless and help me through it. Yeah. And your course was recommended to us from a couple of people who had done it. And so we went along and he's just like singing your praises to everybody now after we did the course. And he got loads out of it. And I got so much more out of it than I thought I would. I just, so then, after that course that weekend, we both had a bit of an idea of then how, like I had more of an idea of how I wanted to birth, which was great. Because looking back now, I think my birth and how I felt about it would have been a completely different experience if I hadn't kind of put things in place and learnt more about it and like obviously done your course.
So what shifted, Mel? What shifted? Part of it is we don't know what we don't know. So obviously learning a whole lot of stuff really helps. But what sort of changes did you experience as a result of going through the program that you can see now really made a difference? What shifted inside of you?
I think I was just thinking, oh, well, it'll like birth just happens and then I'll have a baby on the other side of it. I just hadn't thought too much about it. And so just knowing the different stages of labor was huge, and knowing I just educated myself on just the different things that can pop up and how I once, I walked away from the course going, oh, okay, this is how I want to birth now. But I also walked away going, but I'm also okay with if things detour, then that's all. And I've got things in place to help me get through all of that. Just that keeping that stress response down was a huge thing. And I know that played a huge role in my birth.
That's powerful because your subconscious mind wants to know you've got your bases covered. So it's all very well to, have an idea of how you want to birth and what you can bring to the party. But
we do know that ultimately we're not in control of the birth process, and being able to have a game plan, I think, for if things do deviate, that I'll be okay with that too, because I can remain really anchored to my capacity to stay calm, which really is the key to unlocking women's physiological potential in birth. Being able to activate those hormones and being able to stay as calm and relaxed as possible helps you be the best physiological version of yourself, regardless of what type of birth you end up having. Yeah.
Yeah, knowing that was my one job.
Yeah.
My role was just to kind of stick to my breath, just do what my body was asking me or wanting me to do, and that I knew that my partner had the rest sorted. If things went off, he knew how to advocate for me throughout. He knew what we kind of both wanted, and so there was no needing to worry about anything else besides just what was happening in my body.
Yeah.
Huge. And I didn't, and then like you mentioned that you kind of go into that primal state, and I really just went internal, and it was it was incredible.
Wow, that's cool. So let's fast forward now to the actual day.
He was ready to come into the world. So we had but actually, sorry, I'm just going to backtrack slightly. Also into the podcast and other birth stories as well, kind of gave me a better idea of how things can happen, how people reacted to it, and just knowing that every birth is different.
Yeah.
And that was a really helpful thing as well, knowing that everyone is going to birth differently. There's no one way to do it. It was really nice as well, because you weren't thinking correctly, this isn't how it's meant to be. That was also really helpful. But on the
that point on storytelling, that's how we've always learnt about birth, Mel. Like, storytelling is the key to passing down wisdom from generation to generation. It's a cultural thing, and sometimes not all stories are helpful because they can make women more scared, and that's certainly the intention of this podcast, is for people to understand what moves the needle in birth and what sort of tools they can bring to the party. And that's good.
It came pretty quickly. So he was born on Monday evening. Sunday night, tightness in my lower back, and so I was like, oh, this is different. I've not had this before. So I kind of just was on this, like, the exercise ball, moving around a little bit, and it was only there for 5 or so minutes, and then I went to bed and it was fine. And then the next day, I was I was a little bit like, what am I going to do with myself today? So I went and had some acupuncture, because my sinuses were horrible, and I'm like, I'm not going to be able to breathe. And they had been through the thing. I'm like, I need to make sure that I can breathe properly, so when I go into labor, I've got this breath work sorted.
Nose breathing.
And I was just shy of 40 weeks, and I think the acupuncturist did do some induction things as well, because 2 hours later I was home. I was at home. I blew my nose and my waters broke.
Water coming out the top and the bottom.
And I was like, oh no. And I had wet.
Powerful blow there, Mel.
And so then I called the midwife, just to say my waters had broken, and I knew from the course that, some people's waters break, some don't, and then if they do break, you can still have 24 to 48 hours until you go into active labor. She said that to me. She's like, look, that's fine. Just relax, take a nap, do whatever you enjoy that relaxes you. It can be 24 to 48 hours. I'm like, okay, no problems. And then more water came, and I was like, I'll just have a lie down. And I couldn't lie down, and then a contraction came. And my partner was work from home that day, which was really lucky. And I had a TENS machine that I had hired. So I was like, oh, can you get the TENS machine? I think it's meant to be better. I put it on earlier. So we put that on. And then another contraction came and they were coming quite quickly. And so my partner called the midwife and he was like, I think this is happening right now.
Where
And
right? So you had your own midwife, Mel.
Yeah, so we were a part of the continuality program through Calgary, which again I'm so lucky for. Like, I had an incredible experience with everyone there, and really just everyone with the pregnancy that I dealt with was amazing. But my midwife that I had was actually sick that day, and my backup was on holiday, so we had somebody else who I had spoken to once before, and she was just lovely. And so she said, all right, I'll be there in 20 minutes. And she showed up. And you mentioned in the course how you kind of just, you kind of go into yourself and nothing else. Like, you make your own little cave. And I had done that. I was in the bedroom, and then I think my partner was on the phone to the midwife. And when he came back, I was in the bathroom with a dim light. I had towels around me on all fours. I was just like in the zone. And so the midwife came and she saw how fast the contractions were coming. And so she did check to see how dilated I was. And I wasn't sure if I'd wanted to be checked or not. But everything just felt like it should happen. So she asked, and I was like, yeah, I think that's probably a good idea. And I was 8 to 9 centimeters dilated.
Oh,
yeah, so that was about 40 minutes from my waters breaking. And she was like, oh, okay, all right. So she called for backup. I had another midwife there, and then she called the ambulance. And at one stage, I felt like I needed to push, because she was like, look, we've got everything we need to birth here. You're perfectly safe birthing here, or we can go to the hospital. And at that stage, I think my partner thought, there's no way we're moving her from here. And so when I thought I needed to push again, she checked, and I hadn't dilated any further. And she's like, look, we've got time to get to the hospital if you'd like to do it, or we can birth here. Totally your choice. And at that stage, I was like, no, I want to go to the hospital. And I'm glad I did, because I didn't get out of that bath once I got into the birthing suite. Yeah. But this is where what I learned in the course absolutely helped me, because I was just focusing on my breath with the contractions through in between the contractions and through them. And my partner was there, and he was really getting me to slow down in between. He was doing the great things, because I kind of forgot throughout. No, yeah, exactly. And yeah, so I had my eyes closed. This is something you had told us, and I had my eyes closed from leaving my apartment until we got into the birth suite. So I was on the gurney down, through the apartment block into the ambulance, all the way through. And it wasn't until I got into the birthing suite that I opened my eyes, and it was beautifully dimly lit. And, the midwife had gone and set it up, and the bath was running, and it was all really nice.
Mel, that's a really great strategy of closing your eyes, because it can be very overwhelming when you're changing environments like that. And I often say sometimes putting eye masks on or putting your audio tracks on during those times can keep you in the zone and not connecting to the external environment, because that can really disturb birth when we get overwhelmed by the bright lights and the sounds and people, doing their thing. Did that really help, did you think?
Absolutely. I'm not a fan of bright lights at the best of times anyway, and it was afternoon, so it's probably about 3 or 3:30, I think. Yeah. So middle of the day, and it really did help, because there was obviously a lot going on. And honestly, my only job was breathing. I just breathed through the contractions. People were doing everything else around me, and that was, my partner was getting the bags and making sure the ambulance was getting to the right apartment block. And I had no idea anything was going on, really. So it was great. And I know that really, really helped, because at no stage did I feel stressed at all, or worried or concerned. I honestly, the only thing I was doing was breathing. I'd breathe through that. I'd breathe in between. And that was like my only focus.
Did you do anything else with your mind?
I remember in the pushing stages, and that was just like your body, yeah, like your body was designed to do this. Like, you know, he will, because I had a long pushing stage, and I'm like, it'll, you know, he'll cut, like, well, I didn't know it was a he, but, you know, baby will come when the baby's ready to come out and all of that. But there wasn't too much else. It was just, like the breath was huge. Yeah.
It's always interesting to explore that with women. What did you do with your mind? Some women say, I have no idea what I did with my mind. It just went. Because that prefrontal cortex goes offline and we go into that primal part of our brain and we can't think. And people asking us questions or talking at us can be really irritating. And so it's best when women do stay offline, because when they're in the primal part of their brain, it means they can continue to work with labour, not against it. That's where they should be. Thinking is not, there's no place for thinking in childbirth, which can be very hard when you're in a hospital, signing forms and things like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, there wasn't anything. My partner had the whole, you know, like you had mentioned, like making sure, you know, water and things like that. So he was really good at giving me water. But then like food and things. And I think I remember at one stage he asked me, like, oh, did you want anything to eat? And I was just like, no. We've skipped that whole first part of like,
this long labour land, not so long.
Yeah. Yeah, but even things like he had said, he's like, I know that you're not going to want me to touch you. And I think at one stage, he kind of put his hand on my back or on my shoulder, and I just kind of pulled away from him.
He got the message.
Yeah, I mean, he knew that was going to happen anyway. But when I was in, the bath is where I needed to be. Tried sitting down and moving, and it was incredibly uncomfortable. So I got in the bath and didn't get out, but it was that beautiful weightlessness and being able to just kind of stretch out and move around in between contractions was really
beautiful.
Also like my own little space, because I just kind of put my hands together and I was like squeezing my hands together and just had my head down. And, you know, it was just breathing through, and then the water would come every now and then. I'd drink some water and then I would just go back to what I was doing.
Yeah.
Which I just found all of that really interesting, because you mentioned it, but it really is, you do just, and because I knew that, I allowed myself to not be distracted by other things.
Yeah, that's great. You surrendered to that state.
I mean, the wives, you know, they're also incredible. They just sat there and held space for you. She wasn't trying to, there was a couple of times where she's like, oh, do you want to try a different position? And so I moved, like, you know, things like that, and then just made suggestions. But there wasn't anybody intervening or jumping in and kind of telling me what to do. Just, she was really, like, it was great. She was just letting me go how I needed to go.
Can you describe, because with short births like yours, I mean, it's interesting though, like the Sunday night before, you had these twinges in the back, which were different, which you felt. So chances are you were having contractions at that point and potentially starting to open. So when labour starts can be not always easy to define. Yours was pretty, you know, water's breaking seems a clear start point, but it could have been before that. However, with short labours like yours was, they can be very overwhelming. Sometimes women say, "Oh, I hope it doesn't take too long," and you think, "Oh no, give it time to build and to adjust." Short labours can be very overwhelming. Did you ever feel that, Mel?
I actually didn't. They came once they start, like when the contraction started, they felt fairly powerful. But they didn't feel like, it didn't feel like I couldn't get through it. I do remember at one stage, I did say, I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere. But now, me back, I'm not sure. When I had started pushing originally, I was really kind of like actively pushing. But after I'd said that, I'm not sure we're getting anywhere. I think he must have moved down a little bit further, and it wasn't that much longer after that he was born.
So tell us about that pushing stage, Mel. What was that like?
It was a weird sensation and a weird, like, because I think at the start I wasn't pushing correctly, and the midwife Lo had she had guided me through, because I think I was kind of pushing and then I was taking a breath, and she was like, no, try and like almost like circulate that and keep breath down. And then once I did that, there was more progress. But even that sensation of feeling that head crown and then go back in and come, and then she's like, and I was like, oh, like, why is this happening? And she's like, it's your body just preparing you, and you're just like stretching.
It's very normal.
It was just obviously a very strange sensation.
Coming out, going back in, coming out, going back in. It's all part of helping your body to open.
And then I was just shocked at how quickly, once the head, like, he just came out afterwards. And I would have known that, but like you said, like, you're just not thinking then. Because I was like, oh gosh, I've got to get the head out, and then I've got to get the rest of it out. This is going to be a lot, but the head's out and the rest just kind of follows.
Yeah. Is he looking at you?
He's actually asleep now.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh, he's lovely.
He's pretty special.
So what was that moment like when you met?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, like, we my partner wanted to like,
catch him,
and that obviously that wasn't happening in the water, so I pulled him out, which was, again, like, just really quite an incredible experience. And we knew what we were having, and then again, my partner had wanted to, like, announce the sex to me. And so I kind of had it in my hands, and I, like, looked down, and I was like, it's a boy. And it was really, I mean, it was just a bit wild. Like, he was just there, and he said hello straight away, because he started crying straight away. And then we just had a few moments in the bath with him. The umbilical cord was quite short though, so it was not overly comfortable. So but yeah, it was kind of, I don't know, like, not shocking, but just a bit surreal that this. I think I was my partner, like, oh, like, we made this. Like,
that first moment of meeting is one of those times that you'll never forget. And sometimes you can have ideas that it's got to be a certain way, and a big rush of love and all this, and it can be like that, but it can be a lot of things. And sometimes women's first response is, oh my God, thank God that's over. And feel a bit stunned, about the whole thing. What do you remember feeling about it?
I think, I remember not having that whole gush of love. And I'd heard a few people in different podcasts talking about how some people might not feel it a few weeks in, or straight away. It's all very difficult. I think it was shock, like, oh, he's here now. Like, this is it. We're now like a family. Yeah, I just kept looking at him and then looking at my partner, like, like I just did, and he's just like, you just did that. You just did that. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And because it was quick. Like, he was born at 7:15. And I think it was about 2:30 that my waters broke. So,
very efficient.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of time to kind of process a plan in that earlier state. Like, you're like, oh, this is happening now. Like, it was there, and then he was there. Yes, but it was lovely. Like, and then we were able to go just like onto the bed and chill out and have skin to skin contact and all of that, which was really nice. And just kind of like laying there, like kind of quietly together, just watching him, and that was really, really nice. Because that all went really nicely. And then I tried for a physiological third stage for the placenta. And then that didn't happen. Like, we tried like to the toilet to gravity and things like that, and that and then I had the oxytocin, and the midwife tried to assist in removing it, and it still didn't quite want to budge. So then that's when we had an OB come in to check and see if he could remove it. And again, no luck there. So I ended up having to go and have a manual removal.
Right.
And things, and that's again where that breath work and things worked really, really well for me, and just kind of in the process. Because my partner had said he was so relaxed. But I remember having this thought as it was all happening, because that again happened quite quickly. We were just kind of there, and it had been a couple of hours of us just being in bed. But by then I had lost a significant amount of blood. And the doctor said, oh, like, we have to, you'll have to get it removed. So, we had time to discuss how I wanted, like, if I wanted to go under or have the needle in the back. And, he spoke to me about the risks and all the rest of it. And so it wasn't, I don't know, it didn't feel too rushed at that stage. But then I had a couple of nurses come in. Like, it was just, this beautiful, quiet space, dim lights, with my partner and I and the baby and the midwife. And then it was the OB and a couple of other nurses. And then the gurney came in with a couple of people. And the nurse that came in that was trying to put is it the catheter in the hand?
A cannula.
No, cannula, sorry.
Yeah.
She put that in, and I could feel her urgency, and I could feel stress coming off her of like, this has to happen. We have to get her away quite quickly. And I just remember thinking, I'm like, if I was an anxious person, this would be setting me off right now. Like, this rush. But I was like, okay, I'll just, let her do her thing. And I think it probably happened all within a few minutes or 5 minutes. And then I was out of there. So I remember her mouthing to my partner, like, I love you, because he was on the other side of the room with the baby.
Wow.
And then again, I did the same thing. I closed my eyes. So I didn't have my eyes open between there and the theatre or the room. And the midwife came with us, or came with me until she, until she couldn't go any further. And then even in the theatre room, there was quite a few people in there, 3 or 4 nurses, a couple of, like, a doctor, and then a couple of I can never pronounce this.
Anaesthetist.
Anaesthetist, thank you. There was 2 of them in there. I think one of them might have been a trainee of sorts, or at least just recently graduated. And so there was a lot of people in there as well, and they were all lovely. but I tried to keep my eyes closed as much as I could until they're like, you've got to open your eyes now so we can give you this, so we can count down and make sure you're out. But yeah, I kind of felt for my partner at the end, because he was then just left in the room with the baby in his hand. But everything
How were
went
you
well.
able? That's a big kind of detour from meeting your baby to now having to go in for surgery to help remove the placenta. How were you able to maintain that equilibrium, Mel? I'm really curious about that. Do you think what did you anchor yourself to?
I just think I just kept thinking, like this is just how it's happening for me. Because ideally I would have birthed the placenta. We would have spent the night together in the hospital, and we would have been home the next day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had that time. We had like 2 hours on the bed together,
thank goodness.
With that. And I mean, I trusted they knew what they were doing. Like I had done everything that I could, to have the placenta removed. That's not how it was happening. So it was just kind of trusting the process, and just, yeah, knowing that's just how it was happening for me.
Yeah.
It just didn't, it stressed me out. I mean, I knew that if I had stayed at home and that had happened, it might have been a little bit of a different story. It may not have, but I was where I needed to be.
Yeah, which is very reassuring. And seeing all of those health professionals can be overwhelming, but I always say the flip side is very reassuring, because it's like, okay, they're all here for me. Yeah. Aren't I important? Do your stuff, work your magic. I'm not on my own. It's a much better option than having one person looking really worried, not knowing what to do. That'd be a lot more nerve-wracking.
Yeah, and I had done everything that I could to try and I needed help with it, and that was okay.
Yeah, you really were able to accept that was okay. You were able to step into the what is, roll with what's happening, which is such a precursor to being a parent, because you're not in control,
Yeah, and then even when they were telling me that's the next stage and what have to have, that's what had to happen. We were still able to ask, the benefits of, the different, either going under or the needle in the back, and we were able to kind of just work out what was going to be better for me. It still felt like we had choices throughout as well. Wow. It wasn't, you're doing this and this is how it's happening. Like, I mean, I know I didn't have a choice. Like, I had to go and get it removed, but we were still able to have conversations. And I think that came down to the midwife as well. She was incredible. And I think that helps a lot as well.
Yeah. They do often act as a conduit between the woman and the system.
Yeah.
Help communicate things. Communication is so important for women. To be reassured and to help them to understand what it is they've got to do to get the job done. So it sounds like you had excellent care, which I just think is wonderful. So Mel, what did you learn about yourself, my darling? What did you discover?
I was thinking of this the other day of one of the reasons we did the course as well is I'm incredibly good at doing things on my own and not needing help from other people. The whole time I'm like, I can do this. Like, I don't need anybody. But there's a difference between needing and wanting and accepting help.
Yeah.
And I think that was me letting go of that a little bit. Was one thing that, and I think going into motherhood is a big thing, accepting help from others and not trying to do it all on your own. So that kind of starts that off.
There's a connection there, isn't there?
Yeah.
We're not meant to parent alone. We're not meant to birth alone. We're meant to be supported. That's not always easy for the modern woman who's so accomplished and used to having dominion over a whole life.
Yeah, but accepting that. And so I think that was a big part of it. But yeah, just I was pretty proud of myself that like how it happened and how I felt afterwards. And I speak, like, when I've told people my story, a few have said like, wow, that's a lot, but it didn't feel a lot. Like I kind of enjoyed it in a way. I mean, I don't want to do that every day, but it was an enjoyable experience for me. And that was really one of, like, once I started thinking about how I want to birth, you know, I wanted that to be something that I could kind of look back on and be like, oh, that was, you know, I did that. I'm pretty amazing. Like, my body's pretty amazing. But being able to look back on it and enjoy it, or just kind of, like, I'm smiling now thinking about it, how it was a pretty incredible experience.
Yeah.
And that a lot of that comes, like you mentioned, I felt loved and supported through, and it really does make such a big difference on your outcome, or how you might think back and reflect on it. Yeah.
When women feel safe, loved and supported, they labour really well.
Yeah, because even like the contractions, they were strong, but I never really thought I can't do this. And because there was that kind of going through, like, you know, your body can birth this child, like your body can birth this child, and also it's not forever, right? Like there's an end point to the contractions, and at the end you will get that baby. Yeah.
What advice would you give to a pregnant woman?
I mean, look, as much as you can. I mean, education is key. I think the more you know, the more you know. Whoever your birth person is, knowing and trusting them, and just trying to create that safe environment for you, is to just pay dividends. Like, it's going to be more helpful than almost anything else. And then just trust your body. You know, trust yourself that you can do it. And then however it ends up, like, if it's not quite the plan you had, then that's okay, because you know, we can plan as much as we want, but plans rarely go like, you know, they never really go, you know, come through. So yeah, just trust yourself.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mel. Thank you.
My
so
pleasure.
Mel's story is a fabulous story of trusting her body, getting prepared, getting to know what she didn't know, anchoring herself to her capacity to stay calm. So when she had the ambulance trip and got to the hospital and then had to get help to get that placenta out, she was able to continue to be in that state, to be the best physiological version of herself that she could be, to activate the hormones that support the process, not the hormones of stress. She had fabulous support from very skilled caregivers, as well as a partner who really, really knew what it was that they needed to do to support her. And she was able to make that transition with her little boy into parenting, recognizing that she needs help sometimes and that's okay. And it's the way it's meant to be. So thank you so much, Mel, for sharing your beautiful story and your beautiful boy. If you want to have a look at her son, go and have a look at us on YouTube, because he's just gorgeous. He's very peaceful and very serene. Yeah. So thanks for tuning in and listening, and we'll have another story for you next week. Have a good week. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe and share this podcast. Transform Parenting is a childbirth and parenting education organisation that supports families through pregnancy all the way through the first 7 years of parenting. why not watch our free webinar on Keeping Relaxed and Excited About Birth, where we discuss the 3 most important things that will change a birth. You'll find us at our website on www.transformparenting.com.au. Thanks for listening.